In this extensive discussion, Ben Shapiro examines the recent U.S. seizure of a Venezuelan oil tanker, unpacking its geopolitical implications and the broader U.S. national security strategy. He delves into the complex relationships between the U.S., Venezuela, Russia, China, and other global players, while also touching on domestic economic policies, immigration concerns, media acquisitions, political violence, and healthcare debates. The U.S. government, under President Trump's announcement, seized a large oil tanker off Venezuela's coast, reportedly the largest ever seized. The tanker was allegedly involved in illicit oil shipping that violated U.S. sanctions, carrying oil from Venezuela and Iran to Cuba. This action is part of a broader effort to economically isolate the Nicolás Maduro regime by disrupting its oil exports, which account for 80 to 90% of Venezuela's export revenues. The seizure could deepen Venezuela's economic crisis, potentially leading to political instability or a coup without direct U.S. military intervention. The move also fits within a larger campaign targeting drug trafficking routes and allied regimes in Latin America. The White House's national security strategy underscores America's intent to maintain dominance in the Western Hemisphere by countering external influence from China, Iran, and Russia. The strategy emphasizes using aid conditions to discourage countries from accepting Chinese assistance, which often comes with strings like surveillance and debt traps. The approach echoes a modern, muscular Monroe Doctrine aimed at preserving U.S. hegemony and security in its own backyard. Pressure on regional leaders, like Colombia's leftist president Gustavo Petro, who is aligned more closely with China and Iran, is part of this push. Shapiro critiques what he views as contradictory U.S. foreign policy toward Russia, highlighting recent proposals reportedly shared by the Trump administration with European allies to reintegrate Russia into the global economy. These plans involve using frozen Russian assets to fund reconstruction in Ukraine, but also envision restoring Russia's energy exports and business activities. This, he argues, risks granting Russia a financial rebound that could embolden further aggression in Ukraine. He questions the wisdom of signaling a potential U.S. withdrawal of support if Ukraine does not accept these terms soon, underscoring the tenuousness of the peace process as Russia's demands remain largely unchanged. The conversation moves to the rising challenge posed by China, especially regarding Taiwan. A classified U.S. assessment reportedly warns that China could overwhelm U.S. forces in a Taiwan conflict due to its ability to mass-produce advanced weaponry and deploy lethal technology like hypersonic missiles. Despite this, the Pentagon continues to invest in large, expensive platforms such as new Ford-class aircraft carriers that may not provide a decisive advantage in modern warfare. Shapiro advocates for a military modernization geared toward emerging technologies like AI, robotics, and new procurement strategies, rather than simply replicating past military structures. Shapiro highlights concerns over easing export controls to allow companies like NVIDIA to sell advanced AI chips to China. While these controls were initially tightened due to Beijing's struggles with producing high-end semiconductors, the administration's recent move to permit sales of the NVIDIA H200 chip hints at a confusing strategy. This could accelerate China's AI capabilities, undermining U.S. technological superiority at a critical moment in global power competition. On the economic front, the Federal Reserve recently cut interest rates for the third consecutive time to counteract signs of a cooling labor market and potential slowdown in hiring. Jerome Powell acknowledged inflation pressures linked in part to tariffs. The discussion highlights ongoing debates about how tariffs and policies impact inflation and affordability. Shapiro points to the lingering economic pain under the Biden administration caused by rising prices and high interest rates, arguing that while progress has been made toward a balanced budget and lower interest rates, affordability remains a critical issue. The conversation touches on Republican internal debates over extending Obamacare subsidies that are set to expire soon. Some Republicans from swing states support extending these subsidies temporarily to avoid steep insurance rate increases that could harm their reelection chances, even though House leadership resists doing so. Discussions also focus on long-term policy directions favoring market-based solutions and HSAs, rather than ongoing government subsidies, which create dependency. Shapiro discusses the interplay between immigration policy and welfare systems, highlighting data showing that a significant majority of Minnesota households headed by Somali refugees rely on taxpayer-funded welfare programs. This statistic is used to underscore concerns about importing individuals who may become economically dependent rather than contributing to the country's prosperity. The episode reviews recent calls by political leaders, including Utah's Republican Governor Spencer Cox and Pennsylvania's Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro, for all leaders to condemn political violence irrespective of ideological origin. However, Shapiro criticizes Democrats for often failing to acknowledge violent or bigoted acts by members on their own side, citing examples related to Black Lives Matter and prominent Democratic politicians who have been silent on anti-Semitic incidents. The discussion also covers ongoing corporate developments in the media industry, focusing on the competing bids by Netflix and Paramount Skydance to acquire Warner Brothers. The potential impact on CNN, a division of Warner Brothers Discovery, is examined carefully. Shapiro notes that Trump favors including CNN in the deal to ensure changes at the network, which he perceives as politically biased and declining in viewership. The episode highlights the political and regulatory complexities surrounding the takeover, including Bernie Sanders' criticism of corporate concentration in media ownership. President Trump has publicly stated he will not be firing Department of Homeland Security Secretary Christy, despite rumors expressing satisfaction with the administration's border policies and drug interdiction efforts under her leadership. A new immigration-related policy initiative is discussed involving a Trump Gold Card aimed at wealthy foreigners. For a $1 million fee, these high-net-worth individuals could gain fast-tracked visas with certain tax obligations, with corporations also able to sponsor employees for $2 million. A more exclusive Platinum Card offering greater residency flexibility and tax advantages is planned but not yet released. The initiative seeks to attract capital to the U.S., while limiting lower-skilled immigration tied to welfare dependency. The episode briefly touches on youth attitudes toward American patriotism, with only 41% of Generation Z expressing pride in the country. Organizations like PragerU are praised for correcting the historical narrative provided in educational systems and promoting patriotism through accessible digital content. Chuck Schumer's recent remarks condemning anti-Semitism and bigotry are acknowledged but critiqued for ignoring similar issues within his own party. Shapiro emphasizes the need for political leaders to confront bigotry regardless of political affiliation, honestly. Powell's comments about rate cuts to support labor markets while balancing inflation risks are further analyzed. The Fed's split vote and differing opinions on the extent of rate cuts illustrate the uncertainty in current economic management, with inflation still above target and wage growth showing mixed signals. The difficulties Republicans face in navigating healthcare policy, including Obamacare subsidies, are highlighted as critical for maintaining political majorities in upcoming elections. The tension between ideological goals and pragmatic electoral considerations is evident. Aside from political and economic discussions, the episode includes mentions of sponsors such as Simply Safe for home security and Acorns for personal finance, alongside personal notes from Shapiro about family meals and holiday gift ideas, providing some lighter cultural context amid the heavy topics.